Hello, 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 and today we're covering the last E.G.O that Honglu has access to, at least for the time being, and that is going to be Effervescent Corrosion. Effervescent Corrosion is a heat level E.G.O, it has a 17 base with a plus 15 roll, attack rate of 2, and a piercing damage type. Now before your attack at 50% HP or less, you gain attack rate of plus 1, and at 25% HP or less, you gain another attack rate. So, most of the time, you're not going to be getting that 25% or less conditional. So, 3 attack weight somewhat makes up for the mediocre roll of this E.G.O, but 4 attack weight definitely does, but you're not going to be getting that all too much unless you're using K-Corp Hong Lu. So, it's alright, I suppose. But, on hit, inflict Rupture by Gluttony Resonance divided by 2, which could be good. And on hit, inflict 2 Gluttony Fragility next turn, which could be good if you're running a Gluttony team. Inflict a lot of Rupture, inflict Gluttony Fragility next turn, could be good. And on hit, inflict 2 Bind next turn. That's not bad, that's pretty decent. So, pretty decent on hit effects, to be frank, although a couple of them rely on you using a Gluttony team, which, to be fair, I mean, you have Gregor, most of Gregor's E.G.Os when you use that team, but other than that, there's not too much Gluttony support, so this E.G.O is going to be floating in that limbo for a little bit, I suppose. And the same thing can be said about its passive, Green Slime. If struck at less than 50% HP, inflict 1 Rupture on the attacker. Activates to the highest Gluttony Absolute Resonance times per turn. Now, this could be pretty good, right, if you're running a Gluttony team, but it could be pretty mediocre if you're not. So, take that with a grain of salt. This E.G.O is actually not that expensive in terms of your sanity. It's going to cost you 20, which is on the lower side. But for the price of this E.G.O, oh boy, it's actually kind of expensive, costing 7 in total, by having 6 Gluttony resources and 1 Gloom. So, pretty alright, I guess. I mean, if you're running a Gluttony team, which you would want to if you're using this E.G.O, because your other opponent is Dimension Shredder, which you probably would want to use more likely than this, unless you're running a Gluttony team. That's the only scenario I could see you running this E.G.O, but maybe the corrosion will change my mind. But still, I'd definitely say if it gets fueled by the team it's supposed to be ran in. But the resistances of this E.G.O are actually kind of interesting. Like, you would think you'd be resistant or ineffective to Gluttony, but you're not. You're fatal to Lust, fatal to Sloth, ineffective to Gloom, and endured to Envy. Just normal to Gluttony. That's pretty nifty, I suppose. Now, if you decide to crow this E.G.O, it's going to get a pretty decent roll with 27 with a negative 12 coin, attack weight of 3, and piercing damage still. So, attack weight looking pretty decent, the roll looking pretty decent, and before attack, at 50% or less, you gain another attack weight, and at 25% or less, you gain another attack weight again. So, most likely you're only getting the 1 additional attack weight, but that's going to bring you up to 4 with a 27 roll, which is not half bad. And 5 with a 27 roll is pretty good, I would suppose. But, on hit you inflict Rupture Count, not Potency, Count. That's pretty good by Gluttony Resonance divided by 3. So, this can be very good for a Gluttony-based Rupture team, if you want to run that. I mean, I don't know why you would, but you definitely could. But, the next on hit, which is heal 50% of your damage dealt, is pretty darn good, right? Healing is always a very useful tool in E.G.Os, and this is no exception, but on hit inflicts 2 bind next turn, so pretty good on hit effects, I would have to tell you. Now, once again, Effervescent Corrosion has a pretty darn good drip. The Awakening is fancy, as most Hong Lu E.G.Os are, and the Corrosion is nice. I mean, it turns you into the E.G.O, I like that. It also gives me a telepole kind of vibe, with the man on top, but the man's inside the clan. So, pretty good. I'll give that like a 9. Yeah, 9 is pretty fair. For the strength of this E.G.O, it could be darn good if you're running a Rupture team or a Gluttony team, so it really depends on that. The roll isn't necessarily the best in the Awakening. The Corrosion has a pretty decent roll and a pretty decent attack weight, so I'd have to give that a 6, 7, 6 if you're not running a Rupture team, high 7 if you are running a Rupture team, so even it out, make it 7. And the usefulness of this E.G.O is pretty high. It can give a lot of Rupture count. It can definitely give you, well, it's always going to get bind next turn, which is very useful. Can make them weak to Gluttony, and can definitely benefit from Gluttony, can hit a decent amount of people in the Corrosion, already amount of people in the Awakening, and you can heal 50% of the damage dealt on Corrosion, which is going to be a pretty penny of health that you're going to be gaining back. So, I'd say that's like a 8.5. 8.5 is pretty fair. But, that was the E.G.O. I'd say it's pretty good. I mean, the Corrosion definitely somewhat competes with Dimension Shredder, but the Awakening just does not. Although Dimension Shredder can be used in most scenarios, this E.G.O. wants you to run a Rupture and Gluttony team, which I don't see that being a very good comp, at least not right now. That'll change, and this might become outdated, but until then, use Dimension Shredder, and that's about it.